listening to Journeys with Rebecca Radio with your host, Rebecca Jernigan, your tour guide into discoveries. Coming to you live simulcast from the heart of America to around the globe via the World Wide Web, terrestrial radio, satellite, and podcast. Let's journey together into the realms of the unknown to the known in search of enlightenment, knowledge, and truth.
I am here in the heart of America, broadcasting live and heard on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, Studio B, and also being simulcast at wolfspiritradio.com. This is your host, Rebecca Jernigan, and you are listening to Journeys with Rebecca. And welcome to Friday night, Journeys with Rebecca live broadcast. Tonight's going to be another really good night. I have JP here with me again this week. And we're going to start the night out by talking about sensitivities. You know, there are many layers to this topic, and he and I are going to discuss the 3D aspect and get into more of the metaphysical and other dimensional aspects of sensitivities as well. You know, there are a few sides of the topics that I know is also going to come up through the next couple of hours. We've also been on the same page with some other things, and sometimes you just have to talk about what you have to talk about, and we're going to keep it really real tonight for you guys. Once we move past the sensitivities, not that that is not real, but we're gonna bring in some information, and we're gonna be talking, just shooting right off the hip. I think you guys are really gonna have fun with it, enjoy it. Some of it may even be new information for some of you. But it certainly is an eye-opener for sure what's going to happen here tonight. Please remember, if you have questions, you can make sure to get those into the chat boxes. You can find those both at freedomslips.com and wolfspiritradio.com. We have monitors in there. They will forward those questions to us. Before you go anywhere, though, tonight, please do log on to my website. That's journeyswithrebecca.com. Sign up for the free and confidential newsletter. You find that link at the upper right-hand corner of every page. And for those of you who would like to take advantage of the reading special, just go to the appointment page right there at the top of my website and click on it. It gives you all the information. There's drop-down menus and all of that. I'd love to hear from you guys. Please do remember that each of these radio stations are commercial-free and listener-supported. So please do use the donation button found on Wolf Spirit Radio and the site support button found at freedomslips.com. And I think without further ado, we're going to go ahead and welcome JP to the show. Good evening, JP.
Hello there. How are you doing?
Okay. Well, you know, we're all here.
Yeah, we've arrived today at this date without being maimed too much.
That's true.
Emotionally traumatized too much, and I think what they call it is like high functioning.
Yeah, there you go.
Know, so able to almost kind of fit in with reality, but not quite.
Yeah, there you go. I kind of like that. Call it the new normal. And you know, that little phrase that was coined there not too long back, a couple of years back, about the new normal. I have actually spent some time over the past few months kind of looking and observing that term, the new normal, and how there are so many things that have become kind of standard in our world that even from the time that, like, you and I were growing up, JP, it's so far removed from what this world used to be. It's just an extremely fast-paced environment we live in. It's just really bizarre. I'm getting feedback. So do you have speakers
Yeah.
on? Okay.
No, not me.
Okay.
Who's on now? Where's that coming from? It must be from studio or something. Anyway, so yeah, it's gone now, but it feels like, and we've said it over and over again, you know, it feels like we're in a surreal science fiction movie that we used to watch when we were kids, kind of thing. You know, we've got all the, you know, all this high technology, sort of, almost. And and again, it's dysfunctional technology, like in Brazil. Have you ever seen that film, Brazil?
Don't think so.
All right. It was made by the Monty Python sort of stream.
That's why I haven't watched it. Okay. Not a Monty Python fan, dude.
Like a kind of 1980 All right. It was a kind of 1984 type thing, George Orwell, dystopian future. And all the machines, it wasn't smooth like iPhones or iPods or anything like that. It was really like mechanical and dysfunctional. Everything broke down all the time. Which indeed, although we have these lovely smooth items, they do break down all the time, especially like things that I seem to use. Anyway.
Well, almost actually daily. Technology is not stable. People think that it's stable, and they've gotten used to the fact that if somebody, people that send an email are just automatically making the assumption that the other person is actually receiving it.
It's going to get there, yeah, especially text messages. They're the great one. How many relationships have completely failed because somebody hasn't received a text message? Why are you ignoring me? What's wrong? Who are you seeing? Why are you there? What's going on? I can't bear it. I'm going to kill myself. Goodbye, cruel world. Boom. And, and it's because, like, the mobile phone had run out of battery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird. But anyway, so we're in this weird science fiction dystopian future that we call the new normal, which used to be the weird. It used to be surreal, these ideas, these ways of life, And now we're living in the time of, like, Dr. Strangelove kind of military nutters, mad scientists, secret Nazis everywhere. What's going on?
So, all of this stuff is pretty much what I alluded to at the very beginning of the show when I was doing my little opening there about some of the other topics that we were going to get into tonight. We're going to keep it real. And we're going to come back to all that because it's tied into some of the other stuff that you and I had talked about we were going to get into tonight. So, this new normal and this understanding of what's going on and the surrealism and et cetera and so forth. But this also will tie into some level as to what we're going to start the show with tonight, which is the topic of sensitivity. Now, some people may have misunderstood that term, JP, as being over emotional. You're being too sensitive, right? That's not what I was talking about at all. However, that can be an attribute of somebody being sensitive. There was a book out many, many, many years ago that was kind of recommended to me called "Are You Really Too Sensitive" by Mary Calhoun. Wow, I don't know how I remember that. Anyway, and in there it goes in and it's actually describing people who are intuitive, people who are empathic, people who are clairvoyant. They kind of break it down a little bit in this book, right? Are you really too sensitive? And it was really more of an explanation, and a really wonderful explanation about how to understand some of the natural talents and abilities that other people may misunderstand, okay? Like, I would always know when a phone rang and who it was going to be before they called, which I still have that to some extent. And I would say, so-and-so is getting ready to call. I'd be sitting there with a friend of mine or something. I'd say, so-and-so is getting ready to call. 3 minutes later, my phone would ring, and sure enough, it'd be whoever it was on the phone. People would, it's like, wow, you are such a freak. And honestly, I did not really understand in those days what it was that I was doing or what that was. I just, like I said, I always thought that everybody was like that, and it come to find out, not everybody is. Not everybody's, to that point. So the point about sensitivity is sensitivity not only to your own gifts, but we're really going to be talking a lot more about how people go about their day, what can affect them on different levels. It can come in when you're in, I call it the bad juju, when you're in an environment where the energy is just thick like soup. And, you come out of there and you go, God, I just want to go take a shower. And you don't know where that thought comes from, right? Like, oh man, I just got to take a shower. Ooh, I don't know. I was feeling pretty good when I went in there and a little nauseated now that I came out. Everybody's going to have a different level of to how bad juju or bad environment is going to affect them, right? So the idea of being sensitive is also being aware and cognitive of where is that sensitivity. With all of these shifting and changing of the energetic field that we have undergone in the past 10 years. I mean, a dramatic shift in the energetics on this planet. To the point where the energetics are such now that it's even hard to ascertain and dissect and discern what they all are, because there's just so many of them, one thing piled on top of another, and their level of an intensity or frequency has increased. So as people are going through their everyday world, like they may walk into work and they go, wow, man, it feels like somebody died in here, it's like a funeral. Or they'll go into work and they'll go, wow, it just feels kind of odd. I feel like the fish out of the water today. Those are our day-to-day kind of experiences where we have these thoughts and we kind of just dismiss them and go forward. Well, it's important for you people, in my opinion, to recognize that something feels off. Something doesn't feel right to them. If they are consciously having a thought that, man, this feels awful, or man, I don't know why, I feel like I need to go home and take a shower after being there. Whatever their experience is. You know what I mean? They have to be aware. They have to take that cognitive thought, that aware thought, that conscious thought, and then they have to explore it. Well, how did I feel before I went in there? How did I feel before I got to work? How did I feel when I got up? See, this begins the journey of exploration. This is how a person learns about themselves, how different energy patterns and energy fields and people, and this is how you learn discernment and awareness of who and what is in your environment, what you need to kind of guard yourself against. And notice I didn't say the word protect. I said guard yourself against. Some things you don't need to own. Some things you just simply need to observe, like you're watching a movie without being a part of it. And how you can move through this thickness, this density, this soup that's out there. And how you can do that and come out, unscathed at the end of your day. This has gotten to be, quite a challenge, for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that don't even go out anymore. They don't get out in the public very often. And when they do, they have real trials and tribulations with it, because they are very sensitive to their environment, and they don't realize that that's actually what it is, because the mind is thinking and they're not allowing the consciousness, the higher level of consciousness that comes in, that awareness, for them to own it, to give it credence. So that's kind of where I'm starting with all this. I know that was a lot.
So you're talking about like being guided or steered by some other force that is not your own higher self?
No, not saying that at all.
No?
No, are you talking about being sensitive in the terms of being sensitive?
Oh, right. No, in terms of but in terms of like being influenced and being undue influence.
Oh, no, that comes from other people. It comes from the earth. It can come from the flybys, the stuff that's just floating by us. It can come from, if you're in a controlled environment, such as a workplace, right? That's a controlled environment, right? In other words, not everybody off the street's going to come in and spend time in your cubicle or your place where you might be, building something or manufacturing something. It's not going to be just like a restaurant or a mall or something like that, right? So you're going to have a controlled environment. And you may walk into work and feel real weird on some days. Surreal, I think, is a term that you used. And it's like a lot of times people get kind of, they get a little shy within themselves about wanting to find out what that is. So a lot of times they ignore it because it's a level of uncomfortability and unknown to them.
Well, it's a bit like an odd smell, isn't it?
Yeah.
You walk in, there's a funny smell, but you can't place it, and eventually your nose fatigues and you don't smell it anymore.
And then you don't and you don't say nothing to anybody else. Nobody else talks about the odd smell in the room.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you smell something funny,
Yeah. It's like, ooh, what is that? No, I can't.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It might be my neighbor there. I better not say anything.
That's right. It might be me.
Yeah. Right on. So, so it's a lot like that, sensitivities that, the 3D world is what I'm really, and it ties in, there's no separation between our world and other dimensions. There's just this, knowingness or unknowingness, as it were, about them, right? So when you're walking into your workplace or Anybody that's ever walked into a restaurant, someplace new that they've never been, again, another environment that has, a self-contained unit, right? You're walking into a self-contained unit, whether it be a restaurant or a store of some kind, whether it be a grocery store or what have you, and you walk in it, and sometimes it's very welcoming. You want to go and sit down, and maybe then you start, going with a lot of frequency, so you kind of know this place. But one day you walk in there and you feel, something doesn't feel right, And if you did some exploration while you're there, which means asking questions as well, you might find out that maybe the owner is sick, or the cook is sick, or somebody got fired, or there was a fight in the restaurant between a patron and another patron or something. There's usually a reason for it. But see, that energy hangs around, and a person that's sensitive will be able to tell that there's a difference in the temperature, so to speak. Now you mean that not in a literal, but a metaphorical way, or they might feel uncomfortability that they never felt before. So when you do that, it's about stopping in that moment and asking yourself, what's making me feel this way? Did I feel this way before I came in and I just wasn't paying attention to it? Or was it when I actually walked in here? And you can do all kinds of tests. You can just turn around and walk back out, pretend you forgot something, and see if it feels different when you walk back out, and then turn around and walk back in. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can do that nobody will question, some of the actions that you're doing. They wouldn't look at you strange or odd or think anything of it. In other words, you're not drawing attention to yourself when you're doing things like these little experiments. But I would tell people is that, this whole idea of being sensitive is also about being aware. If you can describe it and stop and observe it, then you're way ahead of the game for most of the people, in my opinion. After spending many, many years observing people and how they actually walk through their environment, and how most people just don't even pay attention. They just accept this as the normal. They accept this as the normal, right?
It's the background vibration. But it's like the frog boiling thing. You can put a frog in hot water, it'll jump right out. But you put it in cold water and then gradually raise the heat, it won't notice the difference as you raise the heat bit by bit, until eventually the frog cooks and dies. And that's the same kind of lack of sensitivity. We get used to, we habituate. We are known to be habituating kind of beings. So, the news is gradually slanted. It's very, very slowly move from one topic to another, so that your mind has just enough time to file it away, but not enough to process it. And thus we're kept on a run. And when you're sensitive, you can see that, and you really, you can feel, hurried by it. You can feel that feeling of being hurried by it much more than other people. It's like, they would, if they wanted to have tested some campaign, they would check, the sensitive people first to see their response to it, because they respond and react in their body viscerally to differences in frequency. It's like, almost like, it's like you walk into a room and it's got a funny smell, and you don't like that smell, so you change the way you're breathing in a kind of way to compensate. You don't breathe in too deeply or something like that. And you breathe that shallow while you're in that room, and then you step outside of the room, you can breathe again. And it can be like that with different frequencies. And indeed, every room has a frequency, and every room has its dimensional, space and time going. It's like when you walk from one room to another, you're stepping into a different vibrational frequency, and therefore a different dimension in a way. So different frequencies, like it might be in the same frequency band. It's another radio station on the same band. So it's all, connected. They're all sort of slightly related, and which is why when you walk from one room to another and you walk in and you think, why am I here? Is because you had the thought in the other dimension, and you walked into the other, walked through the doors, and each door literally is a portal to another dimension, another frequency space. Unless you live in a room in a house which has exactly equal room sizes, which I don't think people do.
No, or you just live in one room, period, and everything goes on in one room.
That's right. So you never have the problem of walking into another room and forgetting where. There's the solution, Rebecca. Yeah, just everybody lives in one room.
Thank you.
FEMA have got that idea as well. Yeah.
Well, let's break that down a little bit so it makes even more sense to people. Not that that didn't, because it did, but like if you're in your kitchen, what are you doing in your kitchen? You are preparing food, you're cooking food, you're baking food. You're washing it. It's usually a place of nurturing, right? You clean your floors, you wash your pots and pans, you make your tea, your coffee, whatever. Sometimes it's a gathering place for people. When you offer them something to eat or drink, they come in and partake of it in the kitchen, right? There's a place of nurturing, generally speaking. Even for those that don't cook, they're going to offer somebody, hey, you want a Coke or you want a water or whatever it is. It's still a place of nurturing on a different level, but it certainly is that you are being cordial and friendly and nurturing to that other being that's there.
That's the second ray. That's the second ray. And that's the ray of the heart center and of the soul. So the kitchen is the soul of the house.
Right. And then you have a living room, and some people have living rooms and family rooms, so depending on what kind of a house you have, it will depend on what kind of activities go in there. But if you have a living room and there's no TV in there, maybe it's a game room or just for, special occasions, or it's just for when you have company over, like the old parlors used to be, and you would sit and entertain people and chat, or maybe it's somehow connected to, the dining room or what have you. So everything is done, has its own function, and each of these functions will obviously carry a different frequency or vibration because you're doing something different in that room repetitively. You said habitually, and that's the same thing. So, we are creatures of habit. So in the dining room, you don't prepare foods, generally speaking. You generally serve and eat food, and this is where conversation and things like this go on. So it carries a different ambiance than even the kitchen does, but it's also a place of nurturing because that's where you get your sustenance. You take your sustenance in. And then, of course, we have bedrooms, and then we have hallways, and then we have bathrooms, and you might have a rec room and or a movie theater in your house, or you may have a craft room. So every one of those rooms are going to feel different from every other room in your house because what you do in them is going to be different. So a good thing for people to do is to actually start outside their house and just take a deep breath and just walk through your house and see if you can actually feel the differences in each room of your house. Doesn't matter if you have a 3-room house or you have a 23-room house. Go into each of the rooms and see how different they feel to you. If you can begin to become aware of your own environment, you become better understanding of how you are responding to those energetics. It will also assist you if something has shown up that wasn't invited, so to speak, into any of those environments, because the more attuned you are to your own home, because that's where you spend most of the time at when you're not somewhere else like at work or something, but this is what I call your safe place. Your home should be your safe place. So if you can become very familiar with sensing the shifts and the changes within each room from day to day, because each room is going to be slightly different than it was the day before because the energies are different. You carry in different energies. You've had different experiences. Maybe different people have been in there at different times and different things have happened. So all of these things is really, really important and help you get a really good, firm understanding of how you relate to the changes that are going on in your environment. You can carry all of those tricks and tools and everything that you've learned from inside your house to any other place you go. I don't care if it's an outside outing or if you go to a mall or if you're going to a big grocery store or a tiny little boutique somewhere or a restaurant or a large chain. It does not matter. You will begin to really kind of do a check and balance system of like, this feels good, this doesn't feel good, I need to be guarded. I need to be guarded around this individual. I don't know why. But if the more you do this, the stronger it becomes and the more self-empowerment you actually give to your own self, I think is probably a good way of saying that. JP.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I'm just finishing this Hershey's, was that a Hershey's egg or something?
We have a caller. You want to take the caller?
Yeah, we got to talk to Chris. Let's talk to Chris. He's phenomenal.
Okay.
Hello. Green heart from the chat. Coming in okay?
Yeah,
well,
Chris, good to hear your voice.
Hi, guys. Great to hear y'all tonight. Welcome back, Rebecca. We missed you a lot.
Aw, thank you. It's good to be back. And it's lovely actually talking with you.
Thank you so much. So Rebecca, you helped me about a year, I can't remember. It was in the spring anyway. Guess it was last spring. And, various phenomena. So here's the latest thing. I'll try to just be brief. Sometimes I notice when I'm on the couch and listening to the radio and falling asleep, something strange happens. This strange wave comes over and into my brain. Unlike normally when you fall asleep, the person just goes in and out or however that happens. But this seems very much like a wave of energy. Now, it's happened several times, so I've tried to play with it. And as it was happening, it was uncomfortable. I would move my awareness from the front of my brain to the back and try to move my awareness down to my heart center. And it seemed as I did that, this wave would target where I was focusing my attention. Now, it seemed to have happened 2 nights ago listening to the radio. So yesterday I was taking a mid-afternoon meditation break on the couch, and I did a meditation where I filled my body with golden white light and expanded in stages to fill the entire universe, and then I staged it back down into my body, and I was laying there in a nice state, and I started to go into some remote viewing strange visions, and I drifted off into sleep. Little did I know it. Slept for about half an hour, and I woke up to that pulsing, electronic, very electrical sensation, boom, right in the middle of my brain. That same sensation, only briefer. It just jolted me awake, and it seemed to hit right in the middle of my brain. Now, I had an image the moment before I awoke from this dreamless sleep state, and that was the image of an electric bass guitar hitting a note.
Okay. There's a couple of questions here, and see if you can clarify them for me. When these waves or pulses or this similar thing happens to you, have you always meditated before in that same day or within an hour or two after going to sleep or before going to sleep? Or
no, that was the first time. Usually
okay.
It's while I'm just on the couch listening to the radio and horizontal at night, and it's usually late as I'm falling asleep. This was the first time it happened during the day, and the first time it woke me up.
Okay.
Usually it happens while I'm falling asleep.
Okay. Well, in that just before we go to sleep time, we're already putting ourselves into another state of beingness, right?
Yes.
Because we're letting go of this conscious world. We're allowing ourselves to go into that restorative place. But what I kept hearing from this was that, and I think it's interesting that you had this like guitar note that showed up a couple of days ago, that you have somewhere in your meditations or the work that you've done, you have asked for an upgrade. I'll put it that way. You've asked for an upgrade. You've consciously sought out an upgrade.
I did when I was with the shaman, actually.
Okay.
And that was when I got a little too deep.
This is what has triggered these events, was that statement, that question, that desire that you made a statement to. And this is the, you can call it a reward if you want, or this is the outcome of that request. So the universe is listening. It's answering you. But the other portion of this is I was watching you as you were going through and moving your awareness, and you were totally internalized. The next time this wave comes in, why don't you go out to meet this energy pulse or wave or frequency? You should be able to find where it comes from.
I've been trying that the last few days when I'm just getting the general low frequency humming in the right side of my brain. I've been trying to reach out and follow it, to no avail. And similarly, when one of my ears rings, I try to follow that out. Well, usually when the ears ring, I just immediately send love back to the source.
Okay, well, these are separate events that I'm talking about here. The ringing that you're getting, that's entirely different. I'm asking you, this wave is a consciousness. Not that the pinging and ringing isn't, but it's a different level. This other wave that you have coming in is of a different, higher frequency vibration and conscious entity, as it were. It's intelligence. I would suggest you reaching out, and I think you will find I'm putting into quotation marks, a personality behind this wave of energy. This is something that you've asked for. It's now coming forward, and I think you need to get acquainted with it. And then after that, you can decide whether or not this is something that you wish to remain in your space or not, or maybe set some ground rules down for it, or what have you. After you fully explore it, don't make any determination whether it's good, bad, or not. At this point, I want you just to find out if you can meet its personality, its conscious awareness like you are.
Okay, I'm listening. I did, after this happened yesterday, I was still laying there on the couch, so I really tried to connect to my higher self and ask for some type of, input or intuition on this. And the only message I got back seemed to be the words, "You are vulnerable."
That's why you go out and meet it and don't allow it to come in, and you move yourself around because it's following you around. You have to find out where it comes from.
Right.
That's vulnerable, by the way, doesn't mean weak or unprotected. It's just showing you that now you need to reach out. Instead of internalizing, you need to also externalize, which is reaching out. It's like remote viewing in a sense. Okay?
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my first, I always want to jump directly to, psychotronic weapons when this kind of thing happens, but are you getting that impression that this is just sinister technology?
No.
Okay.
I am not. I am getting that this is a consciously driven, based on a desire or a wish, and regardless of the source of where it comes from, it has its own personality, and that's what you need to find out. What it is, what's it doing there, and you need to figure out whether or not you want to keep it there. This is because you ask for it. No one can determine for you whether or not it remains or doesn't remain. It's not going to do you any harm because it's already been there 3 or 4 times that you're aware of, and it hasn't harmed you yet.
Okay. I mean, it certainly seems unpleasant as it's happening, but
well, it's also
I'm still kicking. So
yeah, and I'm not saying now. I'm going to be very clear here because I don't want to front load you here, but I'm being very clear. You have to determine the intentions of this because you called it forward.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's my responsibility.
Yeah, I could tell you, but it's not going to help you if I do.
Okay.
Because this was from your heart's desire, in a sense.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you. This is helpful, and this gives me a path to move ahead with. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Go ahead.
I have an input on this too. This is something like we were talking about before. We're kind of doing our evolution thing, going through the process and allowing these things to happen live on air, live in front of people. Never happened before. You know, it's always been hidden away, all these processes, through the initiations in the temples and all this stuff. So it's now out in the open air, since the other lot are doing their thing, you know, here we go. So what that means is that other people who have been, who have had these experiences in past lives have the opportunity to receive these energies and take the upgrade, as it were. So they got the hooks there, you know, because in past lives you've done study, you have a certain amount of understanding of spiritual work and all of those things, which give they're like a hook that allows new knowledge to hook onto. And when you meet people like Rebecca, people that you may have met in past lives, and we all meet these, we're all big team, just kind of waking up and, you know, filling each other in and briefing each other. And this is what all these internet radio shows are about. You know, it's a big team briefing. So here we are, all waking up. And here the thing is that the information that we're waking up to hasn't arrived yet. Or, let's say, is in the process of arriving and hasn't been processed. It's still like raw data from the satellite. And that is why, you see, because here's where I relate to this. This is last year, I had I had an awful time and I had an amazing time, all at the same time. And the thing that I got almost loud in my head, and it wasn't an electric voice, and it was definitely, it was more of a feeling than a voice, but it said very definitely, I am your requested upgrade.
Wow.
So does that make sense? I get that, and we've all called for it. Now, we all do different things to call for it, and I use this process which I called the litanies. And this year, or this last Christmas, it's a process that happens in December, and you listen to each of these things, or you can say them yourself, or you say them along with me, and it's like requesting the upgrade, basically. And every year, every few months, we've been getting a stronger and stronger wave of this. This is what I've been calling the galactic wave. And in the galactic wave is intelligence. It's high frequency versions of us in terms of our consciousness. It's like our higher selves. It's our higher spirit. Because we're one with the universe, we're one with the galaxy. The galaxy is a being, we are its thoughts. We are, the galaxy emits its thoughts from the center of it. They ripple outwards. It takes thousands of years to arrive. They come in cycles, they come in waves, and we're just getting the leading edge of one. And we're going to be, swamped by it, I'd say, in about 3 weeks' time. In my humble, because
I agree with you, JP.
A lot of people are talking about this kind of thing, and the way I see it is that this is like the bow shocks of this enormous wave, and that the energy has been rising up and then dropping away, and rising up and dropping away, and rising up, each one a little bit more intense than the last time, and dropping away. What happens is, when they get to the peak of that, this is when these explosions have happened, and enormous amounts of world events have gone on, and people are being sick, and they're laying in bed for a week because they can't move, because they're freaked out, or they just can't get out of the duvet, or they're no energy, or all this stuff. People have not been able to get out of their beds because of the processing that's going on in their bodies as this energy comes in, and it comes in from the inside out. It comes in from the pacemaker, which is the spark. The universe is electric. We run on electricity, and this thing is in our heart, and it makes our heart beat. It's the spark, and it's the tiny spark within, and each spark is a piece of consciousness and a piece of the plasma consciousness of the galaxy, which is the one being that we're all part of. And we're getting an extra charge of that one being, and that one being is what, to all intents and purposes, we would call God. And that's why we have a fragment of God within us. And so whoever is our master, whoever is our, be it Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad or Mao Zedong or Lao Tzu or who is your master, you'll appear to be receiving it from them. But we are one. Your master is you. Your master is your higher self. So I hope that all made sense, but that's the way I'm seeing this whole process, is that we're all getting upgraded from the inside outwards. And it's not Skype. It doesn't make us slower, and it doesn't take up 110 megabytes. Why should a telephone program take up 110 megabytes in my RAM? Please tell me that, unless there's a vast amount of surveillance equipment stuffed in there.
It makes perfect sense to me, JP, and I've had low energy all winter long, and with the increasing daylight, I'm finally starting to come out of it. But it's been processing and trying to get to the root of these feelings. And when I initially called out for this upgrade, I was really using a spiritual megaphone, and the first ones that showed up were immediate and completely undesirable. And much to the great consternation of the shaman that was with me. But maybe now that it's traveled to the center of the galaxy and back, maybe I'll get something different this time. But
I will
request it.
Okay.
Request it.
Work with my intentions.
Ask and you shall receive.
Okay, well, I'll hop back to the chat then.
Thank you, my dear. Oh, you're so lovely. Thank you, sweetie.
Great to hear from both of you. Bye now.
Bye.
Thanks very much, Chris.
So, that particular question rolls right into everything that we're talking about, right?
Doesn't it? That was a bit of a wrap, isn't it? It's
lovely. Sensitivity. And, with his questions and with his experiences, it's I love it. It absolutely just works right in with what we're talking about. And we're talking about normalcy. What is normal? What isn't normal? Nothing's really normal. It's your perception of what your routine is your normal. Seriously. And, some people have a whole different normal than you and I do. And they probably think that we are some weirdos. And that's okay,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, imagine you lived in a black ops community, where all this technology was available. Like you lived in Stargate thing where they had these flash guns and these technologies and Stargates, and that was normal. Every day you go through this weird gloopy thing, down the spiral, and you kind of land in this other place and you're still slightly smoking. Or at least they did in the first show. Did you remember? In the first show, they were covered in ice and they were smoking, and just they came out with its target. And then they walk through, and their hair is still injected to the same position as it was when they walked through. So anyway, I'm just being a geek there. Sorry.
So let's move this conversation.
Yeah, let's get real.
Yeah, let's get really real. Like we've been not real for the whole night, but this is really going to get into some real stuff because this kind of covers a whole bunch of gamuts here. Because people, the first thing I want to bring up before we move into the topic at hand is I want to talk about this thing. I've been following this missing plane thing, right? First of all, I just kind of laugh at some of the stuff that's been posted about it. In traditional kind of, if you want to call it that, traditional media, right? So here's what I read today. And late yesterday afternoon, and then early today, they've kind of changed up the caption under it. But this is all about the missing plane. Now, I'm gonna say this to you and see what you get from it. Okay? It's well known that the missing plane, according to the lawyers, is because of a blowtorch effect of another Boeing 777 3 years ago had the same thing. So these lawyers say that this is what happened to the plane. So today, that caption reads, so because of, in the past, 3 years ago, another Boeing 777 had this effect where something blew up inside of the plane, caused a big hole. The lawyers all agree this is what's happened to this plane and that the plane went down.
Well,
So,
lawyers are trained.
Yeah, there you go. You got it. But how many people would read that and not get the fact that what do lawyers have anything to do with a Boeing 777?
Well, do you really want to go down this road?
No. I'm dropping this because I just wanted to show people the absurdity of what it is that they try to get the public to consume. Because our whole lives have been an illusion. And this is where we're going to start getting real about it, JP. That's why I had to bring it up. I had to bring that up. Because of this extremely, I would call her right in with the mainstream, mainstream occupation, financial world, right? And she knows all about financial world. That's about as mainstream as you can get other than politics, right? Politics are part of that, right?
Well here's the thing, Rebecca. You know, in Britain, you don't read, if you want to know what's really going on, you don't read the tabloids. You don't watch the TV. You read the Financial Times.
Oh, I lost you. There you go.
Because you have to report the truth. You still got me? Oh, that's interesting.
Well, keep going in and out there for a second.
Oh, do I? I must be fading in and out. Must be frequencies being applied to me. I'll leave a short gap. Okay, so here I go again.
Okay.
In Britain, if you want to find out what is going on in the real world, you don't read the newspapers in the general newspapers. You read the Financial Times, because they have to report the truth, because stockbrokers depend on the truth that comes, in their investments. They have to know what's really, really going on. They have to know about what exact amounts of stock each company really has, true stock, how much, resources they have. And of course, all that's been manipulated now because of the internet and being able to mangle things with software. Anyway, beside the point. But what I'm saying is that if you want to know what's really going on, you don't look at politics, you look at business. If you want to defeat a country, you don't look at their military, you look at their industry. And that's what Russia was doing to America in the 70s. But what's happening is that there is we're getting to understand that the government is not really a thing. It's a company with a PR that is telling us that they're in charge of us. That's all it is. It's just like Boss or, Gap or Sony. They're just corporations with a front, and a remit, a purpose. And that's what government is. And politics is just an entertainment. Frank Zappa was right. He said, politics is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex. And if you think about what you just said there, it just drops all of that into forget about what's going on in politics. What really you need to know is what's going on in money. And Karen Hudis was there in the World Bank. And she's an idealist. And she's a kick-ass, she doesn't take, what's the word? She doesn't take prisoners. She tells it like it is. And she's been saying some very, very, very interesting things. And I would recommend people to pay attention to this woman. She actually reminds me of an old flatmate that I used to have, a Spanish woman, and she was great. And she just seems to have a big heart. You know, she's telling the truth, and she's connected with others, and she's really sensible. You know, she's like somebody's auntie. She's just sensible. So what do you think, Rebecca?
Well, you know, I have been doing just a little research on her and her approach to things. And I have to be real clear. It's not that I agree with everything that she puts out there, but I absolutely love her presentation. I have to tell you, she just cuts no crap about nothing. She just calls it like it is, and she moves on.
That's
you
right.
know what I mean?
So,
she just is. Yeah. She's about as real as they get. So go ahead.
So, let's get real and discuss what she was talking about. Now, if you can check this out for yourself, you can listen to this interview that she does with a guy. Now, this guy, he's asking her questions about Anunnaki and fallen angels, and she's going, no, not them. These are...
Yeah, we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah. Now, she named them, right? And I'm just going to pull the page up so that I don't get the wrong word. And just look in my history because I typed it in now. And it's like Homo sapiens, that we have Homo sapiens and, oh God, I've lost it now. Oh, there we go. Homo Capensis. Capensis. Look it up. Homo Capensis. And these are the beings that, they have big lumps of a head. And she was saying, amongst other things, that they can't really breed with humans because they would produce a mule, an infertile child. So there's no real kind of breeding program between them and us, and that they have been basically corralling us and feeding off us ever since the time immemorial, which I believe is about 50,000 years ago. And I believe that they started up with a little small group of them, and they've been they're very long lived. So you have been absorbing some of this information. They call them the Coneheads. She says that Moses was one of them, and the whole Pope thing with the mitre hat, the whole big hat, is the idea that it hides this long bone head. Or conehead, so basically what she's saying is that the world, is really run by a bunch of coneheads, creating a kind of, not Wayne's World, what is it? Truman Show world for us to be in, thinking that it's the real world, i.e. the Matrix, or the construct, and that it's been hijacked, in order for them to benefit in some kind of farmer-type way that beyond our ability to know or reason or see or perceive, they are milking us dry of all kinds of juices from all points of our life. How about that?
Well, okay. There's a lot to that right there. A ton to that right there. So
where should we start?
Well, I'm going to start way back. You said about 50,000 years ago. So here's something that I don't know that I've ever shared with anybody. During the fall of Atlantis, not everybody, left or died. There were pockets of people that were left on this planet, right, when Atlantis was destroyed. But we have a time period, if you want to call it that, time frame, which there was very little activity on this planet. Some other things happened during the time of Atlantis and after it fell, and some other things. And so there was pockets of this. And during that time, there was a lot of, we'll call it conversation, for the lack of a better way of saying anything. There was conversation between all these different factions and races and groups and things out there as to what to do now, because the original plan of this planet didn't go as anticipated. We were never supposed to, at that point, because the universe is always growing, right? It's always expanding. we were at the edge of the universe. This little planet, this little solar system was at the edge of the universe. We're no longer at the edge of the universe. Science can prove that. And the original plan was for something entirely different to take place. It didn't. It was interfered with. We were interfered with, blah, blah, blah. And so the story goes, right? We all know that portion of the history, or have heard it, whether you agree with it or not. I think these beings that they call the coneheads, I think this is a very real thing. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, I was on Carrie Cassidy's show with her, and we were actually talking about the war on planet Earth, and the war actually begins right here on this planet. It's not in the solar system like people might think it is. And I think I've said it for years and years. They walk amongst us. And they do. What some people would call them extraterrestrials, when you called them Homo Capensis. What? I don't know.
Capensis.
Capensis. Okay.
Capensis.
Okay. Oh. Now, let's look at the idea of the coneheads. If you are of the premise that all coneheads come from this and all coneheads are malevolent, I would have to disagree with that statement. I think, like any other race of beings, that there's some that may agree with this and some that may not agree with what's being done to us as a planet as a whole. I don't think that maybe all the coneheads, so to speak, after they figured out what was really going on, because, there's always somebody in every race that wants to be the power broker, right? And they think, oh, I can do this better than my dad or the king or, the prime minister or whatever their hierarchy is stated, right? So you're always going to have somebody that's going to be doing something that's of the darkness, right? That's their job. That's what they want to do. Do I believe that this exists? I can tell you about the story of when I went to visit the Vatican. And I did not go there in person. And as a matter of fact, it was a spontaneous visit to the Vatican. And I'll talk about that probably if we get a break. Last week we didn't get a break. We didn't get our 30, at the hour mark, we didn't actually go to a commercial.
Well, let's just motor on then.
Yeah. So, and I don't know.
We could do some adverts.
Well, yeah. I mean, we could. I'm just saying that we didn't get interrupted with them. So if
okay, let's keep going then.
Okay. So I inadvertently showed up at the Vatican, right? And I'm walking along the Vatican. I've never been in the Vatican myself. I've never, at that point, was ever even out of the United States. So I'm walking along and I'm in these rooms, these different rooms, all over the Vatican. And then I was shown how to get to, the lower levels of the Vatican, that which most people don't even know about. The lower you go in the Vatican, the older the, space is. It's way, way older than what most people might think, because it's built on top of another power source, right? So I'm in this place where, it is really old and ancient. It's stinky, it's smelly, and it smells and feels like a darkness I have never sensed before. And I keep going and going until I reach to the end of this hallway. There's this room, and it's like watching a movie where they do that panning in and out, where it goes in real sharp and comes back, and it makes you feel like you're moving. You know what I'm saying? They go and pan into an object, and then they pan it back out, so it makes it feel like that you're moving towards it.
Yeah, I think it's like a combination of zooming and moving the camera, and it swells the picture around you.
Yeah, and
it swells up, but then your face stays the same size. Yeah. Yeah,
and it makes it feel like you're moving, right? And that's
and they have that glissando that goes.
Yeah, makes you feel like you're like, oh my gosh. Anyway, that's what it felt like, and so I kept going, and I entered into this chamber down there, and the whole thing was a metaphor. As soon as I walked in there, I thought, okay, this whole thing's an illusion, and this is all a puzzle, and I'm supposed to figure this puzzle out. And there is like a moat, if you will, that runs in there. This water runs underneath there. There's a moat, or a body of water, whatever you want to call it. And in it are these big posts that come up out of the water, just barely come up out of the water. And to get to the other side, to find out who's guarding the secrets, right? Or the secret itself that's being guarded, depending on how you want to look at that. You have to step on these posts. If you step on the wrong post, all the posts will go underwater and you go into the water. And you don't want to do that because there's something that lives in that water. Serious. Now, I wasn't watching too many sci-fi movies either at the time, so this is not one of those things. It was a remote viewing thing. So I started across, and it was like I was being shown which way to go. I got about halfway across, and I got a little confused as to which one they were showing me. So I really figured out that I was actually being messed with. So I just followed my path back. I tried it a couple more times and was never comfortable with, by the way, each of these posts that you go across on, to walk across to get across there, the pattern changes each time. So it's not the same pattern to get across it. So I got real uncomfortable after a while, and I just left. Well, I found myself a few weeks later, all of a sudden I was drawn back down to the Vatican again. And I'm right there at that room. And all I can tell you is that it was like the smell of sulfur, right? It was just an awful smell. There was just like this poisonous air there. It was even worse than the first time that I had went there. But I know that there's an intelligence there, and I know that this intelligence is just like, it's almost like it's got tentacles that, these energetic tentacles that just spread throughout the Vatican. So every place you would go there, they, whomever, whatever this is, would know exactly what was being done whenever. But, certainly there is a control mechanism that lives within the Vatican, and that's part of why the Vatican is built where it's built. It takes advantage of the energy source that's naturally found there, and the intersection, shall I say, of the energetic lines that all kind of, come through that area where the Vatican is, geographically speaking. There is definitely something there. So when I was listening to this thing with Karen Hughes, and she was on this radio program, and then all of a sudden she just blurts this thing out, and I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I cannot believe she said that. It's like, wow.
So tell us what she said, Rebecca. What did she say?
Well,
that was your experience, which was,
yes.
Okay, I've heard stuff about the Vatican, and there's something underneath. There you go, and you go down the channel, and right, okay, fantastic. Thank you. Keep going and tell us what Karen said.
So Karen says she's on this radio station, and they're just talking about the fall of the dollar and who's manipulating it, and who's in charge. And she said, all these people that this guy called them the Illuminati or the Cabal or something like that. And she said, well, she said all of these people that had talked about the Illuminati and all of this, she goes, they aren't in control of that. I said, what? She said, what's in control of that is an entity that lives at the Vatican that's not of human origin. And he is the one that is controlling all of the humans. And so the guy is standing there on the other end, and he's going, what did you just say? She said, well, I've met him. I have seen him. And I know he is there. And I know this to be truth. So there you go.
Holy Lord.
I was like, oh my goodness.
Indeed.
And so
Indeed.
Immediately I went back to that vision I had. Man, JP, I had that vision probably 20 years ago. I didn't know there was such a person as Karen Hughes.
So, okay.
Yeah. Right. So this comes from a financial world.
Yeah. So the financial world and all of this stuff. And now we can see, hang on. Right. Okay. So let's put the pieces together. There's a creature that is living under the Vatican, that is mentally controlling all the Jesuits, who control all the rest of things. Yeah? The one, that being the one is the thing under the Vatican. Is that what we're talking about? And the name, is that the Leviathan? Is that, I mean, it's a large, what's that other word for him?
Oh,
there's so many words. There's the Hydra, the many-headed Hydra.
That's not it.
The great octopus thing, Cthulhu. Many words describing some large revolting creature. Now, what's the deal? Does he live in like a sewer? Is he like a kind of great big Jabba the Hutt, sort of like a bacteria that's growing to immortal size and has a lifespan of like some 10,000 years or,
I will tell
when
you,
he's born, he just squirts out another one out of his ass and dies,
Ooh, thank you for the visual. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Not funny.
But yeah, I mean, what's the deal? Yeah? Okay, come on. What does this thing look like?
You know,
Any idea?
I do. Well, let me give you my perception of him or it 20 years ago, is that it was a very large, ancient being. Very large, physically a large being. And it was really old even then. And there was not much that he cares about humans. There's not a thing that he cares about humans at all. None, actually, whatsoever. We are a means to the end. And the end is that it consumes all of humanity that it possibly can. When I say consumes it, it consumes their humanity. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And how do you consume humanity, do you suppose?
Well, you can eat their children.
Let's put that in a more metaphoric sense.
Okay, you can drain their energy. You can take their belief. You can stand in front of God and receive the adulation that should be going to God. Isn't that what the Vatican does?
Ooh, I don't know. Sounds familiar to me.
Just the way I see things,
Yeah, no, I seriously. So, here's Karen Hughes. Just a few weeks ago, she makes this announcement, and I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, right? So she's talking about the non-human entity that is here on this planet, and she said they have been here for a very, very long time. But unfortunately, nobody else has followed up with her that I have found to date that has went on to discuss this further, and I'm not sure if she will even ever talk about that again to any more depth than what she did on this particular radio interview, because she was just simply stating facts. She wasn't getting into the whole bigger picture as far as, the more metaphysical aspects. That doesn't mean that she herself does not have those experiences, but I'm not sure how public she would be willing to go, because it does not lend to a person's credibility. However, I will tell you, in mainstream America anyway, but I will tell you that this kind of stuff is more of the norm than the world that we have currently been living in, which the Elohim have called the construct.
Yeah, and that's what we outlined earlier, of the world that has been created, what's that word? Again, I keep forgetting, the Truman Show that is created around us.
Yep.
And we think that politics is important. And we think that, yes, we should stop the people from ruining the land, but we're not going to do it through politics. And that's never going to happen, because it's just about, it's a game. It's just entertainment. It's
right.
like a TV show.
Right.
Soap opera.
Right.
And you get more truth in Stargate than you do on the news.
You do. And so I want people to really start looking at that. I really, really want people to start looking at their world and understand that this world that we consider normal is not the normal at all. It is a very well constructed illusion that this is how things are supposed to be. But I will tell you is that the veil, we call it the veil, it shreds, and it shreds. Nothing lasts forever, with the exception of the human soul because that's the spark that you talked about. That's part of who we are, right? We're all part of the source. And that spark is an eternal spark. But nothing is permanent, nor is nothing live forever in that sense. Ever. So everything has its time and its place. There are more people like these Karen Hudes coming into the limelight that are exposing this more and more and more to where the new normal is going to be more of the truth of this planet and who we are than the carefully constructed illusion that we all thought was our reality. Just saying. My opinion.
As you do. But the thing is, it's happening very rapidly, this dissolution of what we previously called the veil. Like you say, it's the thing that's hiding us from what's real. And essentially, I was trying to explain this to a friend of mine earlier. Like we see this rainbow, we see red to blue, right? We see these colors. But in the next octave, as there's another bunch of red to blue. Mm-hmm. But very much like our FM radio, we can receive 88 to 108 megahertz. But frequencies just go on. Other things broadcast there. Now, an interesting little analogy is that when you use an aeroplane, you have a particular frequency band on in which your radio is going to be working, and some of them can broadcast a long distance, and some of them have to bounce off satellites and all this stuff. But we don't receive those. You can't get them on your normal FM radio. You need a specialized tuner to get into those frequencies. And this is the way it is with consciousness. And so what we're doing is we're experiencing the expansion of our consciousness without holding it onto a secret frequency. We're doing it on a public band. And what that does is inspire literally others to expand in the same way. And it's a kind of like the opposite of a virus.
Yes. Which is an acceleration.
Yeah, because and the more people, if I tell you, then twice as many people know it. If you tell 2 other people, then 4 times as many people know it, etc.
Well, let's take a look at the acceleration. I really believe it began big time back in 2008. But let's pull that time frame up and let's go to the December 21st, 2012. Or 23rd, depending on whatever date it was, right? All prior to that year of 2012, everyone was talking about this is the end of the world, this is the end of the Mayan calendar, blah, blah, blah. All these things were coming out about what was going to happen. And then there was a shift that took place sometime in 2012, where now people weren't talking about it being the end of the world, that it was about a new beginning. There was almost an immediate shift. I don't know if you followed that or not, or if you captured that, but I sure paid attention to that. I was like, oh, it was just like one day that was out of the news, and the next day it was all about, hey, this is all new beginning. It's not about the end of the world, it's about the new stuff. And so it began. And then we kind of cemented it because our consciousness was there, the planetary consciousness was there about the new beginnings, about this miraculous state, but it also coincided with some astrological events that took place in our solar system, in our galaxy, that which we can see in our own dimension. Who knows what was going on in other dimensions, how all this affected it. Right? So, as this acceleration hit, and the movement since then has been beyond phenomenal. The movement of this acceleration. I have seen it in my clients repeatedly over the past. This year has really been a challenging time for people. It's also been some of the bigger growth spurts that people are experiencing. went on in 2013 and into 2014. This huge, fast expansion. And it is coming at an extremely rapid rate. And that's why people are feeling, pretty discombobulated. That's why some of this news coming out. People are getting more and more aware of how the media is being manipulated. People that are in the news, journalists that are in the news, are coming forward and saying, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you people anymore. They have me reading these cue cards and I'm not going to do it. Right on air. And then they get up and walk off their job. Right on the air. Right? We are seeing this.
Yeah. This is something that Cliff High had been talking about years ago, wasn't he?
Yes.
He's talking about stuff that is going to be happening like this.
Yes. He just had the timing wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it cycles, and the cycles are opportunities. And they could happen one year, they could happen another year. So if you get an October the 13th, there might be an October the 13th one year that it does hit the fan. So, you get it right every year because it's a cycle.
It is. Everything's a cycle. We're going in an up cycle. We're moving into another, what they call golden age. And of course, that doesn't happen in a period of 1 to 5 years. It's hundreds of thousands of years in the making, right? Moving humanity into a different space. However, I do believe that this cycle is a more accelerated cycle than ever before because the energetics out there are much more accelerated faster. It's almost like the protons and neutrons are just like, going 50 billion miles a second, right? Or nanoseconds. Everything is just in this accelerated time, almost like being in some kind of a weird warping, if you will, of time. And of course, we're the only ones that really measure it by the units of a calendar, right? In the sense that we do. But time has sped up literally. When it will, by the way, it does reach a balance and it kind of levels out again. But we're in this upswing, and this upswing is a huge, huge upswing. What I think is interesting, and I keep saying it, I've said it before, I cannot wait until that prediction that Cliff High said when he told people about the Vatican, and he said that people would storm the Vatican and what they find there will blow people's minds. Remember that? Remember him talking about it?
Oh, yeah. And I've also heard this thing about the third Fatima prophecy, which is a subject of much controversy amongst Catholics and the catechism and all that business. Do you know much about that?
I do not. Would you care to share what you know?
Well, sometime, I think it was around 1917, 1916, there were 3 peasant girls in Fatima in Portugal.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Who were visited by some being, and they said 3 things, and they wrote them down, and they gave them to the priest, and the priest gave them to the council, and the council gave them. Anyway, and they said, "Don't ever say anything like this ever. Don't reveal this ever." And they said, "All right, well, what about 1960? Oh, yeah, they might be ready by 1960. So about 1960, they said, "Oh, we're going to reveal it." And they looked at it and they said, no, we're not going to reveal it, actually. and guess who was part of the people who decided not to reveal it in 1960? That's Pope Ratzinger, Joseph Ratzinger, our previous Dark Emperor, Pope, what's his name? Palpatine, he was part of the team that in the 1960s, prevented this secret from coming out. And the secret was that there was a prophecy that there would be a massive kind of bloodthirsty, event that would happen, and cardinals would be killed, and there would be one guy who would be holding the statue in the middle, and in some symbolic sense as he was cut down finally by the final raiders. It's like, it's the end of the world for the cardinals, it's their apocalypse, because they're being found out, and they're being slaughtered en masse in the St. Peter's Square.
So, here's
sick, huh?
Yeah, it is very sick. So here's the other side of this, right? You've got your Pope, your cardinals, you've got your priests, you've got your and all the ones in between. Everybody that's all part of that whole thing. Now, you got your little local priest, over there in your little town, and I have a local priest in my little town. They probably have no clue as to what's really going on. They've never been to the Vatican. They're not in on this, right? The cardinals, maybe. They may be in on this. They may know about this. Who knows? About, the entity that controls, all of humanity in a sense, because the cabal or the Illuminati or whatever you want to call it, are, trying to destroy, humanity. That's their job. That's what they signed up for, right? But, I hate to see those who really were just trying to do the right thing because they didn't have enough knowledge to be, taken out because of it. For me, that's always been a kind of an issue for me when I look at that. Just because you have one bad priest doesn't mean they're all bad. Doesn't mean they're all good, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're all bad, right? So, it's one of these events that you kind of wait for, and in a way you hope for it, and then another way you go, no, I don't hope for it, because it's, it could be really bad. You don't know what it is. But I know that there has been huge amounts of, we all know this. We all know there's been huge travesties against humanity. I mean, let's move this conversation and kind of take it in a parallel direction here. Every president, this was pointed out, somebody wrote an article or something I was reading the other day about all the presidents that just before they get elected, they talk about disclosure. Oh, Rich Dolan. I was listening to Rich Dolan. And he's talking about all the presidents that just before they get elected, one of the things that they talk about is disclosure of the extraterrestrials, right? That we are currently doing business with and open communication with, et cetera, and so forth, right? And they all say, yeah, we're going to give you disclosure. Of course, then they go and they do their oath, they come back, they get briefed. And
they go into the room at the back of the back.
Yep, they get briefed, and then it's never spoken of again.
Yeah. That's the one, like Bill Hicks says, you hear this, the screen comes down, and you see roll the tape. You see the shot of Kennedy being killed from a position that you've never seen before, showing exactly who did it. And they say, any questions, Mr. Obama?
Yeah. And apparently, it is such a bad deal that these people, whatever the secret is and whatever the threats are, whatever it is that's being said to all these presidents of the United States, whatever it is enough to, obviously forever change them, in such a way that, it's unbelievable. And, not that I have any great love for Obama or anything like that, or necessarily any of the last few presidents that we've had, but certainly you don't wish that upon anybody if their intentions were good, if they were good people to start with. And that's the thing. There's such a fine line behind who it is that you follow, or where do you put your energies into? And, politics in and of itself is one of those contrived illusions that try to, they put it into society and it becomes something of the normal, right? There's nothing normal or humane about politics, right? Law has nothing to do with justice, by the way. It's this whole process. Everything we do is almost contradictory. I mean, I do realize we live in a planet of duality here. But sometimes it's like, I think that duality can find a level playing ground. I truly do. I believe that you can do that. I think that you can, you can get angry sometimes and you can be super compassionate in another minute. It doesn't mean you have to be mean-spirited or you have to be hateful or hurtful to anyone else, including yourself. So, I think that duality is okay, but I think there's a way of balancing it in as much as that neither side becomes too overwhelming for the other side. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Well, it's like there's this pushing force that is coming up from inside us that is showing us showing us what the Matrix is and seeing it fall apart because of the energy that is now coming out of us, actually visualizing it into oblivion. seeing it as we're seeing it, and we're now seeing, over the last couple of years, we're seeing how horrible, how truly evil these people are. And the worst ones being the ones who we call the Illuminati. Now, that's a terrible job to have to do, but they were the people who have been feeding this beast for time immemorial. They're the team who bring the bodies, bring the food, the people, the whatever, the gold. Does this thing eat gold? Is it is it a gold-eating being? Does it poop something out? Maybe it poops out. I don't know. But the thing is, and that's probably why it smells of sulfur. Maybe they feed it beans, and it could they have to deal with what goes into it and what comes out of it, and there must be some other trade. Is it a psychic power? Is it like a psychic broadcast that this machine or thing? Now, we were talking about the name of this thing. There was Leviathan, but there's a simple thing: the beast. We've always heard this thing about the beast,
right?
The thing that is under the Vatican. The beast. Some people say it's an artificial intelligence, it's a kind of machine intelligence being. I've got the feeling that it's like a kind of huge necrotic bacteria that has somehow landed on Earth and taken up space, like Jabba the Hutt, and having its psychic influence and being able to polarize people's minds and do all the kind of mind control tricks that the Jedi could do, kind of thing, but on a mass scale. But it's just this huge, ugly, single-celled organism or something. I don't know.
No, in any of those things, there's a possibility of that. That is the whole point. And, again, getting back to that show that Carrie and I did in regards to some of the same similar things is that, it's whatever this thing is needs humanity to feed off of. I do believe that's part of what's happening on this planet with the geoengineering and the extreme, GMO and the pesticides and the HARP, chemtrails, the pharmaceuticals. All of those, if you notice, are all chemical oriented. They're all artificial. So it's turning this natural state of our skies, our land, our trees, our animals, including the humans, insects, everything is getting them tolerant or disease-ridden from all of the chemical overload that has been subjected to this planet over the past 50 years. I mean, it's really gotten bad over the past 50 years, and more so over the last 20 years. Just like the game has been amped up or ramped up. So, all of these things are very prevalent. The chemtrails and all of that, and it gets more and more difficult, to live in a clean environment. And I don't care how you're living, but a clean environment is almost an impossibility with what they're doing in the skies and the atmosphere. So, we're hitting a point here where humanity is really gonna start growing tired of the chemical world, as it were, the artificial world, and they're going to clamor, because that's part of the human spirit, is they're going to clamor back for the way that our life should be. And I think that we can live on this planet with technology, and, have our gadgets and the things that we have become accustomed to, like, lights in your house and running water and things like that, without contaminating everything in its wake to get there. And enough food, certainly, for people to eat without having, to do all this engineering that they've been doing, the Monsanto and all of that, the GMOs and all that. I know it can be done, for sure. So, that being said, I do believe that this planet could be, that this thing, wherever it comes from, may have, obviously it has to have some kind of energy source itself, to be able to supplant all of these ideas into these people's heads, and they run out and do these terrible things against their own mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, children. They're leaving behind a legacy for their own family not realizing that they're harming their own by what they're agreeing to. I certainly wouldn't want their karma to tell you the truth, JP. Not on any stretch of the imagination.
I'm just trying to think about this and see what it is. What I'm getting is you remember V? You know the new series of V that came out a couple of years ago?
I do.
Yeah. She did this thing called Bliss. Do you remember that? She would broadcast this frequency and everybody would just go, and everybody would be raised up into this state of supposedly being one with the Lord. Overlord, yeah. But in a state of bliss.
Right.
And this is the state of rapture, which people have been speaking about for many thousands of years as it's actually being hypnotized. And that's what happens when you watch TV and all of these things. You're being subject to a frequency that makes you feel that, well, it basically triggers endorphins to be raised in your brain and certain different brain chemicals. They just set a frequency and that's all that you need. And you get the same if you listen to somebody's voice who is good, who's good to you, who's got a good intent. Their voice will have frequencies that will nourish you because they'll have, for instance, E and B flat. We could probably measure Karen Huda's voice. There is a and it's a flatness. It's a funny thing, when somebody's speaking the truth. There's no persuasion in there. To me, it's a flat sounder because you're actually saying two frequencies at the same time that are at the opposite. It kind of like a proof parity check that you can measure it. That's what Shari Edwards' work is about. But anyway, her voice comes across and it's believable because it contains that frequency and we all recognize that. So, here's the thing. There's a huge, ugly creature beneath the Vatican that can change our minds. And it's been infiltrating and it's probably got broadcast stations all over the world. It's probably also got satellites with scalar weaponry that can be aimed and pointed, and if not them, then drones can be deployed. And we've heard about the eye in the sky, the eagle eye, the thing, the one controller, the Leviathan, the beast, the thing in the mountain. I wonder if it's a kind of volcanic seam that has a form of sulfur that can be turned into a kind of food for this thing that has been residing there, for years. It's like where the sulfuric fumes come up from the waters and produces this nutrient that this thing feeds on and has a psychic influence and can be and has been creating its deployment throughout the world, and probably CERN is part of it, trying to manifest itself as a sort of more godlike being than it thinks it is. And I think it's demiurge. Maybe it's the demiurge. And what we need to do is take psychic control. All of us take psychic control of these ray guns that they've got in the satellites, and just point it at there. Point it right onto the Vatican, what's the word? Triangulate it so that it goes underneath the knot, doesn't hurt the cardinals, and zap the little bugger. That's what I say. Screw it. Zap the bugger. Zap the paper. The Pope is gradually releasing stuff now, and he's saying, oh yeah, Adam and Eve. Yeah, well, actually, we're kidding about that one as well. No kidding. They're saying it. It's just saying it right now.
Yeah. Well, it brings me back to another vision I had a few years back about the field of the talking heads.
The field of the talking heads vision. I remember this I see a very kind of Beatlesy kind of kind of theme to it. It's like heads on sticks that were kind of all talking out. So Just let's revisit. Do you want to revisit this field?
Yeah, and you know why I want to revisit? Because
yeah.
I think it has something to do with what we're talking
Yeah,
about. See,
yeah,
I've never been able to connect the dots on it.
Exactly, but this is something that you and I have discussed. If people have not heard you, they can go back in the archives. But and they're all at journeyswithrebecca.com, by the way. All of Rebecca's shows have been archived at journeyswithrebecca.com, going back till dot. You're also available on wolfspiritradio.com, and it's a wonderful archiving system, I believe. Meanwhile.
I love it. That's beautiful.
It's my PHP code, folks. Anyway, but meanwhile, you had, several years ago, you had this vision, and I remember you telling us about it.
Oh, it's the most bizarre thing. It was,
fill everybody in. Go on.
Well, and you have to I have to let people know, JP, that these aren't just visions. I'm actually in them. I'm not just observing them. I'm in them. I'm it. Right? It was such a striking experience. It's never left me. There's been a few of them, just like, me talking about the trip to the Vatican. It was just one of those things that just happened, spontaneous. This was one of those things. And I'm not sure that I can explain it well enough that people can visualize it, because they have to be visual, to be able to visualize what I'm sharing with them as much as they possibly can. Just
tell me the story.
First of all, I have a guide that comes. He's a man that stands next to me. He's part of my group. He's the one that introduces me to all the sciences and all this other stuff that I've still not been able to articulate to anyone what was shared to me. So anyway, we're standing there, and I'm in this, I'm in the United States somewhere, and that's what it feels like to me anyway. And I'm looking out, and there is these fields and fields. I mean, it goes on for I don't know how long. But there's these poles sticking up out of the ground. They're all evenly spaced, and they just go on for rows and rows and widths and widths. And on each of these poles is a head. Just the head of a male, very squarish kind of face. It's wearing kind of almost a metal helmet without the face piece, just the side helmet with a little pointy thing at the top, and it's done in a really odd metal, and there's etchings on it. They all have their eyes closed. They have broad noses. They're deep brown skinned, by the way. It's an unnatural color, though. These heads are unnatural color. So I'm looking at these heads, and I turn around and I look at my guide, and I ask him, I say, so what is it I'm looking at? What is this? And all of a sudden, we just kind of drop down into the ground. We drop down into the ground underneath the surface, and I'm able to see these poles go down below the ground. And they go down probably 6-8 feet from the top level of what we were looking at. And from these, poles at the bottom, under each of these is and I'm putting this all in linear 3D terms because I don't know how else to say it. We're like cables. And these cables went in all directions, everywhere. It's not like each of the ones all went to one place. They went to everywhere. So, again, I say to him, I said, what is it I'm looking at? And he says, follow the stream. So, I took one of the poles with the cable underneath the ground, and I looked at it, and I followed it. And I started following it. And I found that this cable kind of went off at the end, someplace clear along the other side of the globe, this particular one. And it had like thousands of these like little streamers that opened up into like little threads, right? And it went back up into the ground. So I went up and I looked, and each of these was connected to a human being. So I went back down and I followed it back up, and I met my guide. And I said, well, I don't understand. What is this thing doing? And so I want you now to get inside of that cable, and I want you to look and see what you see. So I got inside of the cable, and I could see these pulses They were running in both directions, and there's these pulses, and there's like thousands of little strands inside this one big cable. And there's all these pulses of energy. Now, all of them are different colors. They're different patterns. They're different rates. Some are going in one direction. Some are going in another. Some are bleeping in and out. Some are almost a steady stream. But they're all just like massive quantities of electricity, so to speak, pulses of light or energy going up and down these cables.
As you'd imagine, like a data cable going through the internet.
And that's pretty much what I think it would probably resemble, except for...
Yeah, that sounds like what you're describing is forms of information, not necessarily digital data as we know it, but frequency pulses and all sorts of things that transmit energy over between points in space-time.
Right. So he tells me, he says, now I want you to get into... he said, I want you to jump into this cable. So I jumped into this cable and I followed a pulse of energy. What I did was I was looking at this one that it caught my attention, this one stream, right? And I was watching the rhythm of it. And I thought, okay, if I get in between the two pulses, right, then I can follow this wherever it goes, right? So I get in, I jump in this cable, and I jump in between these two pulses of energy, and it takes me, God only knows where, because I came up, and when I came up, I am not on the planet anymore. I am in some kind of a laboratory with all kinds of different beings. And there's these, now this is in days before I'd ever seen one of these. It's one of these drop-down screens that was like clear, and you touch it, and then it's the computer. I'd never seen one of those before. So somebody was standing there doing that, and there appeared to be vials, and there appeared to be like these tube things that these cables would kind of all come back in together and come up, and somebody was pulling something out of them. And I just barely had my eyes up there, and I heard my guide say, do not extend your consciousness because they can tell if you're there. So I popped back down, I went back out, I come back up to my guide, and I said, now what am I supposed to do? And he said, well, there's really nothing you can do. I just wanted to show you this. I was like, well, what happens if you take one of these heads out? He said, well, some of them are sleeping, but not all of them are sleeping. He said, if you're caught, you could die. And it was about going inside of these cables and start unhooking everyone. That's what it was about, was unhooking everyone. And, I got through part of that, mission. I just didn't get through all of it. It was such a tedious job to get in there into each of those cables and follow each of those thousands of strands, ends up being millions upon billions of strands of pulses and disconnecting all of it. So I said, well, maybe what I need to do is just go in there and disconnect the talking head. And unfortunately, when I tried to go back and do that, one of the heads opened its eyes, and it was like that movie, if y'all remember, Donald Sutherland in, that movie, and they open their mouth and they scream. Oh, what was that? The Body Snatchers. You remember seeing that movie, The Body Snatchers?
I don't think I've seen it, but I can get your picture.
Oh my gosh, it's
okay, so
movie.
it was a sonic blast.
Yes,
and
like a screech.
Then you wake up, yeah?
And then they wake up. All the heads will wake up.
Oh, and it's an alarm.
Yes, it's an alarm. Exactly right. You can't get
But
caught.
what can heads on sticks do?
Well, those aren't just sticks. It was really more of a metaphor, of probably what we were talking about with that one beastie thing being there and all the information and how it controls stuff, because some of it goes into all the human beings, but all of them project outward into another arena, which is off planet.
Okay.
And if you disconnect the heads, if I disconnect the heads, which are all the ones that are controlling, one can control, say 100,000 people, right? Or at least have some influence over that 100,000 people. If you start disconnecting those heads, they can't transmit anymore. Now, right along the same time, I was being shown about people how to pay attention to those who are transmitting and receiving while you're standing there talking to them. They get a certain look in their eyes, just a momentary thing, and if you're not paying attention, you won't be able to see it. It's almost imperceptible. But you can actually see them, and whatever information you're sharing with them is being transmitted off planet. In your family and friends, you don't even know it. You're sharing stuff with them, and it's like it goes into this big data bank thing that up there, for the use against the humanity. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, so if you think Facebook is bad,
yeah,
just try having one of these friends.
Yeah. So they were talking to me about, it's about the transmitters, receivers, and they don't know that they're doing that. It's because they're connected to these talking heads and they don't even know it. You see? Does that make sense?
That's right. Yeah. So this is the equivalent of like the agents in the Matrix. Anyone could be an agent for the Matrix because everybody's basically like a laptop running Windows, but the Windows can self-download a new version of itself, or like Skype. Skype has got its own, brings a new version of itself in that is not a benign little communications program, but basically something that can spy on your network and ruin everything that is connected to.
Yeah.
Talk about paranoid. This is like that telephone paranoid list that I read out years ago as well. If you're paranoid delusional, the thing that is by your ear is a nasty creature that is about to bite your ear off. Yeah. So Okay. So back to the coneheads. Back to what we do about them. We have to know who they are. The other thing is the beast. Okay, so I was thinking about this beast creature that lives on something in the Vatican. Isn't there some kind of prophecy regarding this creature?
Now, I have not heard of a specific prophecy about this particular creature, but like all things, it can be dismissed from this planet, either alive or not so alive. Have you heard of any prophecy in regards to this creature?
Apart from the thing from Cliff High, and apart from the third prophecy of Fatima, there is only something vague that I can't even place. The idea about some huge, massive psychic creature that is controlling the world, and we were also talking in earlier shows about this fellow John Dee, who connected with the macrobes, and what if what if this guy is like the macrobe ambassador, and there's only just one of them, but the galaxy is infested with these necrotic bacteria creatures that think they're in charge of things, and it fits that this thing thinks it's our Lord, and that this being called the Archon. So perhaps it's the Archon, or that this is the demiurge which runs the Archons, who are the overlords of all the different facets of its control mechanism, like the Jesuits and the World Banks and all of that stuff. Basically, is the octopus that Riconosciuto talks about. And it's eaten a piece of software called Promise. Promise is a database. It's a program that can eat databases, right? What I used to do when I was a kid is when I was a kid, I was eating databases. But no, really, as I worked in the industry not in the industry, in the academia. So, people would have a database in one format, like you remember WordPerfect, they would have a mailing list, and I would turn it from one format into another. And that's that's what I do as a programmer. And it's just moving data from one form to another, and that's the way that we conduct the energy throughout the ages. We transform it from one form to another.
Yes, you can do that.
The being, the creature. It is elusive.
We shall call it the creature.
The creature, because I tell you, it has an energy around it that makes you forget that you're talking about it. Have you noticed? Every time you start talking about it, you start talking about something else.
Oh, interesting.
Fascinating.
Well, you know, I keep looking at it, but I still can't describe it any more than how I felt about it. I really can't.
All right, start there.
I never
Start
glimpsed
there.
it.
Start there. What is the feeling when you're sitting there in the chair just now, you're feeling normal, you then tune into this thing. What's the feeling?
That its eyes are everywhere. It's just a real, I don't even, wow, is there any words?
Okay, take a deep breath.
Well, there's like 10,000 words. Yeah, it's like 10,000 words. I have to go with, you know, beyond creepy, right? It's beyond creepy.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing that I don't have with it is fear, and it's not because, I think that I'm bigger, badder, or anything than this thing. But that's what it feeds off of, is fear. So it's more of a curiosity when I look at it. I always try to look at things whenever I'm thrown into a situation, like every situation that my guides have ever thrown me in like that. I try to look at it with an objectivity. What is it that I'm actually looking at? Because the eyes can deceive you. The eyes are not trained to see the subtleness that goes on behind. Like you were talking about people talking and how Sherry is doing the two tones, what's being said. And I know you've heard me say it. I listen to what people don't say. That which is not being expressed, because that's the
frequencies
truth.
That are missing.
That's exactly right. That's what I hear. I hear what they don't say. So when I look at this thing, all I can tell you is that whatever it is, I don't know enough about it to determine how to approach it any more than what I did. I can't get there from here. So I'm missing part of the instruction manual, so to speak, like my guide showed me with the talking head, right, of how it is that I'm supposed to be able to view this thing. But I get a creepiness and ugliness, a darkness, a heaviness. If you were to talk in energetic terms, it'd be like somebody hitting the wrong note.
With what we call a discord, or indeed a bum note.
Yes.
I'm very familiar with those little things, you know, being a guitar player.
Right. That's why I said it that way.
Yeah. So,
out of harmony,
energy.
I will tell you, it's out of harmony and out of balance with its environment. It's almost as if its environment, is a, it's a created, yes, it's not really distress. It's a created environment, that mimics its,
like a fish tank.
No, it mimics what's comfortable to this thing.
Yeah, fish tank. You have to put the fish, in order to have fish in your house, you have a tank with water and oxygen and creatures and stuff. So you give it its environment that it's safe in and happy in. So, number one, what is it? And number two, who put it there and gave it that little safe environment? Or, is it sad? Does it want to go home? What's the deal?
I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know if it wants to go home or it likes the power. Sometimes it's hard to understand because there may be several layers of emotions or thoughts or whatever you want to call it that it has. What's the truth of its existence? Why is it here to begin with? Why didn't it leave? Why did it make itself here? Surely it had a way of getting off of this planet. It had it so have chosen to do so.
Fascinating.
Right? Unless it's one of a kind, which I don't suspect it is.
Well, this is the thing. is it one of these creatures that is is it like an immortal creature that can't die, that should have died, that needs to die, that just is like held in this kind of state of semi-death, semi-life, torture, longing, energy? Is it that creates the energy to run this other thing? I don't know. Is it one creature? Here's the question, Rebecca. Is it one creature, or is it a group of creatures that is operating here? Is there one being in charge, or that is the source of it, and then everything else is its minion? Or is there
I can't answer that question. I can't answer that question, because here's what I get with that. Oh shit. I'll have to answer that on another show, JP. But we will answer that question on another show. Oh my goodness.
We'll be back. Whoa, what a juicy show. Thanks, Rebecca. God bless you.
Oh God, thank you. And it was wonderful being here with everyone tonight. Stay tuned. Got some great guests lined up for April. You guys have a great weekend. I love you all. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, JP. Good night, Mike. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.